Hey everyone, this is the second take of the response I'm going to do to an old series that All Babies Are Atheists did about death, mainly the third one for two reasons now that I think about it. He's basically talking about how you inter the body and the traditions around it. Um, Very quickly, I'm going to go into why someone would sit up with the body for a little while. There is a very pragmatic reason from way, way back in the day that they would do it. They don't need to do it anymore, obviously. Way, way back in the day when science wasn't, medical science wasn't that advanced, I'm going to say medical science specifically, because, like, think up to, I believe, the 19th or very early 20th century. I believe that's how long it was. I'm not sure. Correct me if I'm completely off base with this. Also, I apologize for being a little quiet lately. My house is going through renovation hell right now, and God, I hate black mold. Anyway, uh, basically, before we've had the technology we have now to embalm the bodies and things like that, um, there were chances you could be buried alive. And, well, people universally agreed that kind of sucked. So, rather than risk having the body buried alive, they did the only thing they could think of, which was sit with the body for a little while and make sure it doesn't pop back up. This is also the reason there's an Irish wake, rather than because in an Irish family, a funeral or a wake, as we call it, takes quite a few days. And this is why the body's usually on display. They're in a closed or an open casket, and you would sit with the body to make sure it didn't wake up. There was also the superstition of vampires and stuff like that that probably influenced it as well, but just the being buried alive part was more than enough to motivate this, which is probably why they have in the Jewish tradition the man who sits with the body. Originally, it wasn't just to keep the body company, and it's not an illusion of it being alive or the soul still being in there. It's literally a let's make sure this guy doesn't wake up. That's probably why when the Pope dies, this I found out from my dad, and I found this hilarious. What the Pope would do, what the other bishops would do when the Pope dies, is they would take a hammer and hit him 3 times in the head with a silver hammer to make sure he's not responding. It's to make sure he's not. It's literally a way of protecting them. That being said, nowadays, obviously, we don't need that because we have embalming fluids. We have like more sophisticated ways of checking to make sure the person is actually alive, and people don't get buried alive anymore, unless somebody's a twisted murderer. So that's kind of my answer to, why they have the Jewish guys. There's not just a spiritual reason. It There was a pragmatic purpose. It's just outdated. And I'll be honest, I'd keep the Irish wake because it's also an excuse to party, and I'd rather be happy than sad, remembering the good times of someone rather than, thinking of their death. It's this weird. Even when I'm like really upset about something, eventually I'll start seeing the bright side of it. It's really like this weird morbid sense of humor, and the worse the situation is, the faster I see the bright side. So there's that little thing about it, and so a little thing like this actually like what's going on in my house right now bothers me a little bit more than. I just went on a hell of a tangent, but the Irish wake kind of led me to that. But a funeral's not going to bother me as much. I think the only funeral I ever actually cried at was my mother's funeral. So, and I've been to like 3: my grandfather, my grandmother, my grandfather, and my mother in that order. So yeah. Um, as for the coffins, um, you know, Well, first of all, some funeral homes tend to overcharge for coffins and stuff like that. Not to mention the fact you're gonna get a laugh at this. They will charge you the weirdest freaking extras. My mother's funeral. This is the only one I know of. I don't know what they did with my grandmother or my grandfather, but at my mother's funeral, the funeral home near us, which does a good job, so we use them, but they tried to sell us things like a ball made of their ashes, or a necklace with their fingerprints on it, or like weird shit like that. And even birds to be released during their funeral, which I guess some people like, but in my family, that invites a few jokes. My brother-in-law said, "Oh, can we eat them later? Can we hunt them and eat them?" I'm like, "Oh, can we stick the cats on them? Let the cats loose after the birds." What my dad said, because my mother was a crazy cat lady, and I kind of inherited that. So it was literally like. My sister-in-law thought the necklaces were kind of nice, but the rest was all kind of well, that's a little creepy. Like why would you need your loved one's fingerprints preserved on a necklace? Did they have like a special lock that only opened to their fingerprints or something? Because if that's the case, I can see a use for it. But otherwise, I have pictures. Okay, I have pictures. Like that's all I really need. Um, like all these weird fancy things that were either creepy or hilarious or both. Um, so a coffin at Costco seems a little more reasonable to me, actually. And holy crap, Costco does have everything. That was literally the first thing I thought of when I heard Costco had coffins was holy crap, they have everything. Um, Plus, I'm sure some people use coffins for less traditional purposes. I know people that would sleep in a coffin. I hear they're pretty comfy, actually. So, they're not buried in the ground. They become just basically a bed you can shut. If you want a little extra privacy, probably not a good idea to shut it, but or a bed you can shut to keep people off it. Or maybe they'd use it as a storage unit, because it looks cool. Hell, I wanted a hearse as my first car, and those are funeral cars because they look cool. To me, But then again, I do have this weird goth streak in me that pops up every now and then. It's kind of popping up in this. The wool casket made me think of hand knit coffins, your granny knitting you a coffin. I thought of cartoons like that, so that one actually kind of made me chuckle a little bit. But I can kind of see the strangeness of having a metal or really fancy wood coffin, because it does seem to be a waste of that. Or if the coffin is customized, it does seem to be a waste that it would be buried in the ground. But some people get buried in tombs above ground, like in Louisiana, so I could see the point of them there. Because then people will actually see the coffin and it will be like a nice little decorative piece. Um, so I guess it's a situational thing. And for some people, the dead guy's always the one that picks out the coffin. The one who's going to die if they do the custom coffin is always the person who died who picks out the coffin normally, from what I've seen. Sometimes they did it because they just want to, have one last piece of their hobby before, they're buried in the ground and want to share it with their loved ones since they know they're not going to share it with them anymore. Um, and that happens. The dead make weird requests all the time. My mother said to bury her without her shoes on because she hated wearing shoes in life, and I made sure of that. Um, and we even jokingly said we'll bury her with a can of Diet Pepsi, caffeine free, because that was her favorite soda. Um, if I could have found like a can of Diet Pepsi Twist, I would have buried her with that. It would have been a waste of like a discontinued soda, but she would have. That would have, if her soul is somewhere else, if there is a soul, that would have made her happy. But otherwise, it would have at least been a funny little nod to the rest of the family of one of her favorite sodas, and it would have been kind of interesting. And if archaeologists dig it up, it'd confuse the hell out of them, and that would make me laugh. But there is this mentality of one last whatever. Because you're going to be dead. You might as well go out with a bang sometimes. Um, I think that's what the coffin is supposed to be. Although there really isn't a point to a coffin when you think long and hard about it. You know, burying yourself in the ground has the same effect. I don't know if I'm going to have that issue because I'm donating my body to science and to medical research because, might as well get some use out of me while I'm, cold and dead. Um, and my instructions will be just to have a party without my body there, like just have a picture there or something, to celebrate my life. And I'm going to basically said, don't do like a church with like a priest, don't do anything like that, don't bother with that, just have a party to, if you have to have something, have a party. Don't do a funeral home, don't go nuts with this, and, donate my body to science and just, celebrate, life. Um, Make sure my cats are well taken care of if I have cats when I die. Spread out my possessions evenly. If, like, one of my friends is still alive, I'm probably going to give him all my magic cards because I know that was his favorite game. Unless we're really old and over it, then I'll probably, like, pass them on to a game store or something as a donation, saying, here, you can sell all these. Hopefully they're in good enough condition to sell. Because I won't be using them anymore. Somebody might as well. Oh, my cat's trying to be a brat. Hey, Butterball. Yeah, and there is this weird mentality, like, even with animals, they have this mentality. When my cat Jet died, my husband decided, we were talking, usually when our cats die, we put them in a garbage bag and we bury them. That's what me and my family have done for years. And the garbage bag is purely because we don't want to touch these animals, because they're dead. A little gross to touch a dead body. I'm sorry. I've I've never touched a dead body. I think some people do that as kind of a closure thing. I think more than anything else. I think that's just what I think, though. Like a weird instinctual way of getting closure. But normally, with my family, we put the animal in a plastic bag and we bury them, or the vet cremates them when they die at the vet. So, we don't really do it. Like, we love our cats, we don't do anything fancy for them. My husband, this is like one of the first cats he had to live with, too. So, and she was like his little buddy for like a long time because of all the trouble she caused, she had to suck up. Um, he wrapped her up in a towel and put her in a shoebox, which is way more elaborate already than what we did. And then talked about putting like a little marker where he buried her. Me and my dad went off on joke after joke after joke on that when I told my dad about it. Not the shoebox, but the whole, oh, is it going to be like a 20-foot fall monument and da 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 da? Like we kind of went off on that because to us it was silly. So I think for some people it's more. I think the reason people get like really weirdly fancy, like I personally think tombstones are excessive. I understand marking the grave of your loved one, but I'm not gonna have a tombstone, or anything like that. But I think the reason people get like all weird and excessive with funeral stuff is purely an instinctive way of remembering or trying to keep the memory alive of the person. And it gets wrapped up in the spiritual and all this stuff because, everything does at some point. Because that's instinctive for people with a spirituality. Um, that being said, uh, it's not a bad thing. It can be an expensive as hell thing because funeral homes do take advantage of it. They're not dumb. They know money when they see it. But, I can understand why it seems to be of a waste, but can also see why people do it. It is more of a remembrance thing than anything else. And I kind of got that thought when my husband wanted to put a marker on a cat's grave, when to us it was kind of a, why? They're dead. You know, I mean, with people, it's a little more universal that you do that because, we relate more to people than we do with animals, like other animals, I should say, like it or not. But, I still miss my cats. I still miss my little Jittykins, and she was a little monster sometimes. But at the same time, I have cats already. I have two new kittens that are running around, and one of them is nicknamed Jet 2.0 because he's picking up her gluttony skills quite nicely. Um, he just gave me a look like, what? But, we have new kittens, and we have, like, Jet's old playmate Pete running around, and God, this is actually depressing me. That's actually making me cry a little bit, and I'm actually happy. That's really freaking bizarre. But life goes on, and life is always going to go on, till the day the universe implodes on itself. Um, Life goes on, and who knows, maybe there'll be another Big Bang, and new life will go on at some point. And, everything happens, everything goes on. The world doesn't stop for you when you die, and you don't stop for the world when it dies. You know, that's just the way it is. And honestly, it's probably better that way because we get a lot more done. Just a thought. But yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on this whole thing. It is partly emotional, partly old traditions that had a pragmatic reason, like, let's make sure the body doesn't wake up. And just partly probably like the dead wanting to leave one last like mark of their hobby or their passion before they die. Or even after they die, in the case of the coffins. And, there's nothing really wrong with it. I mean, it seems like a waste. Personally, if you're gonna do like a fancy schmancy coffin, you might as well just put your body on display at that point. 'Cause that's kind of what I would do, is I would just put my body on display if I had a fancy coffin. Because if I get something that cool and that pretty, I want people to see it. Use me as a coffee table. I don't care. How the hell am I gonna care? I'm dead. I'm in the coffin. I'm rotting. Just make sure you have a lot of air fresheners in there now that I think about it. Bye.